Hey, I got so many screens. I have that same problem.
Good morning, everyone. Lori, the numbers are going up per usual. Good morning to you.
Good morning and happy Valentine's Day. And I see that we're wearing our red. Look at, I got the heart necklace. And you're going to learn in a little bit when you meet our guests that I even matched up a heart concept with the heart day. I'm in style today, so we'll learn about that in a bit. So first of all, a big welcome back to Lauren. We can hear that we can hear her. Okay, we can hear her, but as you guys can probably hear, her voice is a bit strange. So we're going to have
Mm.
a little tiny intro. We don't want her to push the voice too much, but know that she's going to be in the chat in the party room as always and there for you guys.
And so sorry, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. Like Lori said, first off, happy Valentine's Day. I felt all the love last week and of course feeling it again today. I just wanted to make sure I had this screen up, especially for those of you who are new to the show. Typically my voice doesn't sound like this, but I wanted you to know that the SBDC is here for you. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. So regardless of what state you might be in, you can find one of our locations. That said, for our network, we service the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And here's how you can get in contact with us. You can reach out via phone, 866-588-7232, or online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us and you're outside of our service area, please be sure to go to americassbdc.org, find your SBDC. With that, Lori, just want to make sure everybody's putting all of their comments. The party is what we call it, the party in the chat. So go ahead and join in on the party. We'd love to see your comments and hear what it is that you have to say about the content. And then questions, put those into the Q&A because Lori's going to be monitoring that portion. And then I'm going to focus you back to the chat. Check the chat for useful links. You'll find links to our previous shows via our YouTube playlist. Also, if you'd like to get in contact with our special guest, as well as with Lori, I'll have contact information in there too. So with that, Lori, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Perfect. And I think you might have to enable the chat. Emma are always watching our
Oh,
back, letting us know that the chat is disabled. And while I'm on the chat, guys,
thank you.
the Zoom always makes the chat automatically default to host and panelist. And then a lot of the people in the chat don't see your message. So do make sure when you send a message that you have it click to everybody because we want everybody to be able to see. Okay, guys, I've got a couple different things that I'm going to be sharing today, and I'm going to be going through a whole bunch of slides and stuff and some websites. So bear with me as I totally play with sharing a whole bunch today. So I'm going to just quickly go through. I've got my upcoming classes. I got session 3 of my financial literacy, but it's always good to take session 2 and 3 together. Got the, well, the balloons. If anybody can tell me on the Mac how to get rid of the balloons when you put the fingers up like this, I've tried everything. I've turned off gestures. I was telling somebody a really bad financial situation, and I'm going, well, you got 2 choices. One of them bankruptcy, and the balloons went up. The balloons are not appropriate in my life. So if anybody knows how to get those balloons gone, I'd love to know that. But let's get back to what I was talking about. So I'm also providing, once again, my legal structure and tax advantages, and I am going to continue to do that as well. Are you able to see my screen, Lauren? I'm going to do that again because it seemed, oh, you are. Okay, it's lying to me. It sounded like you couldn't after the balloons. Okay, my upcoming shows, we've got Deborah Darris coming on, and I'm asking her to focus on a few of the AI tools that are really beneficial to small businesses. I know she's talked about them before, and there's so many. I said, can we narrow it down and just talk about like the top ones in your opinion and why somebody would want to use them? So we're going to have that conversation next week. The following week, Chris Diaz is going to come on and he's going to talk about driver rentals. And I think his company's really cute because when I was first speaking to them as an SBDC client, and they said, well, they rent cars and they have so many people, they lease it out for an hour a day. I'm picturing like you would picture you go and you rent a car, right? Well, no, these are like little go-karts that they rent. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, we got to back up. What is it you're renting? So I said, you got to come on the show and talk about this because this is too cute, and how they go about it and how they created a business out of these type of rentals. And I'm calling them golf carts just to explain it, but he'll do the proper and explain it the way it should be, okay? That's just my rendition of it. Now, I'm going to spend a few seconds, and this is where I'm going to be sharing screen, so bear with me as I bounce around. I know I keep talking about this, but it's such an important situation that people who are incorporated need to know about. So I'm going to say it this way. If you're a sole prop, no worries. You don't need to listen to anything I'm saying, okay? If you're an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, any other corporation, you need to listen to what I'm saying. So that kind of clarifies it. So FinCEN is a bureau of the U.S. Department of Treasury. I've mentioned this before. There is a new report that corporations, if they're a reporting company, which I'll explain in a second, they have to report. And if you were formed prior to January 1st, 2024, this year, you'd have a whole year. If you're formed or forming your company this year, you have 90 calendar days to file. And if you're going to be forming 2024, they're going to limit it down to 30 days. Now, what's very alarming, in my opinion, is that if you don't file this, the fines are 500 a day up to 10,000. This is why I'm speaking about it so much. So what I'm going to do, if I can pull this off correctly, and bear with me, is I just want to do a screen share to kind of navigate a little bit. I'm not trying to do a full training on this right now. However, you can reach out to Lauren and reach out to me if you need help, okay? But I'm wanting to just help you to navigate a bit. Lauren is putting into the chat this link that I'm on right now, guys, okay? You're going to get this link that I'm on. When you go to this page, I want to show you a couple things, okay? And I got to get the Zoom controls out of my way. So these boxes in the middle is what you're going to see. This box is very beneficial in giving you some additional information. So for example, do I qualify for an exemption? More likely not, because you can see the exemptions are companies that are involved in insurance, venture capital, they're governments, they're in accounting, they're rather big firms. So this really is something that is more subject to a smaller corporation needing to fill out. Now, they have an aspect of a reporting company. I get you guys can't see this, but you've got the link to go to. So you can see, is it a company that's reporting? And it goes through yes, no. And it basically says, if you're an LLC, a corporation, chances are that you are a reporting company. Now, the other thing I want to let you know is there is a process where you can file online or you can ask for a ID. You don't have to ask for an ID, but this is the interesting part. If you click on this, you have a choice once you click on get started that you can either start online or you can prepare and submit. So in other words, guys, you can download a form to get a physical ID ideal of what it looks like. Now, that's what I did is I downloaded the form so I could just show it to you. You can do this on your computer and you can download this form. So when you download the form, it looks like this. This is what you'll see online. And this is going to show you the exact information that you have to fill out. Now, when you get to the process of filling it out, you will have to upload some type of document to show your identity filling it out and also the identity of the company owner, okay? And so you will have to have that available. Now, I know you guys can't see this in the small print, but under identifying documents that they accept, it's a state issued driver's license, a state, local, tribe issued ID, a U.S. passport, or a foreign passport. So my goal today was to just kind of walk you through the process, let you know, once again, I keep announcing it and I'm going to continue because it's so important that this needs to be done, and to show you on the link, the website of where you can go and how you can get a look at this immediately to get a feel for it. I'm going to go to the Q&A before I go off this topic because I know there's some questions. If you did not know about the BIOI, should your CPA be guiding you through this? Not should be. So I'm going to take away the word should. Leslie, great question. CPAs are possibly more aware of it than not. You know, they should be because they get a lot of information from the government. Unfortunately, you're correct. You may not know about this because although I'm an enrolled agent, you know, tax preparer, so that's where I'm more aware of these type of things, as well as I'm always in the government, you know, documents and stuff. But many people are not aware of it, and that's why I'm letting people know about it. Some tax preparers are assisting, some tax preparers are charging to assist. And I talked to a tax preparer the other day that said they are even thinking that maybe down the road they may have that as part of their software that they do in completing tax returns. So that was a long answer, I know, Leslie. So the answer is not should, they may, but as many things, and I say this to you all the time, guys, the iotas of having it done is on you. So you've got to make sure you have an awareness of it, okay? And what is the new form from a government perspective, Anonymous? You know, I can't answer that completely because I'm not a government person. So I'm just going to give you the best answer I can. And this is a Lori's personal thing, okay? So FinCEN is a department for actually money laundering. That's what it's been in the past. That's what you think about when you think about FinCEN. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think if it's over 10,000 in a cash transaction, I think that's the number still, you have to report a document that shows this, right? So that's what FinCEN was all about. Now they're starting this new thing that they want transparency on who owns the companies. And that's their theory on it. So I really can't say. I'm being careful not to say my personal opinion on one more report to do, but that's allegedly the background of the purpose to the best I can answer that. Yes, it's a requirement for all corporations. Do go ahead and look on that page that I spoke of and the due date. And I'll repeat that, and then I'm going to get to the show. Because like I said, I'm just trying to go over enough. I don't want to capture the show for a training. But if you already were incorporated prior to this year, you've got till next year, January 1st to do it. If you're incorporated this year, you got 90 days, okay? If you're incorporated next year, you only have 30, but that gives you a feel for where we are. I will continue to talk about it, and please know is you can reach out to me. And the last comment, Kim, nope, not if a single member LLC is treated like a sole prop. You have to look at your legal structure. Your legal structure is an LLC. You are taxed like a sole prop. That has nothing to do with your legal structure. This is based on legal structure. Excellent question, Kim. Thank you so much for asking that. Okay, guys, I'm here for you. You know that, you can come out and talk to me. And one and done, Emma, if you have, I just grabbed that. I'm going to grab that one. Emma, if you have any changes to the information, you have to do a revise. They're saying that, well, you won't have to do it unless you revise, but the jury's still out. So I'm going to say, don't know as of right now. The data is saying only update when you have changes, but I can't say what they'll do in the future. Okay, guys, let's get to something really exciting. Okay, I'm like I said, I want to keep telling you because my whole goal in life is to make sure companies are informed and they're safe. And that's what I try to do. But what I'm really excited about is our guest today. Bethany Christopher started Lifesaver Education in 2005. She's going to tell you how it's connected to Valentine's Day in the heart. Lifesaver Education utilizes over 20 instructors, most of whom have medical backgrounds, some with over 30 years of experience. The company's success caught the eye of another training company. With Bethany looking forward towards retirement, it became a perfect fit and a purchase was negotiated. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to be here.
I am so happy to have you. We've worked many times in the past. I think now, I don't even know, maybe like 2 or 3 years. I think we first met at COVID. I don't even remember now.
I think it was even before that, actually.
Might have been, it might have been, because I know I've known you for a long time and I've answered your questions, but what's interesting, we were talking before the show, because that's not been our subject matter, I've never said, "Hey, Bethany, just this." I kind of got involved once you were already an ongoing success, right? And then you were able to, which is a wonderful thing, sell the company, going into retirement, got a whole new bit of experience. But what our audience is like, when you were young and you looked up and you went, well, how did that happen? How did you get there? That feeling. I still remember in my 20s, that feeling. That's what we're going to talk about today. And so let's start out though. So, how did you start the company? What was the inspiration? When it was 2005, walk us back. Give us a story.
Okay. So I'm a registered nurse by background. And so I had already been working for about 20 years. And I tend to get bored reasonably easily, so I would keep doing different things. And one of the things that I found I really enjoyed was starting programs and making them successful. So I was doing these with various different jobs that I had, including working with physicians and helping them become successful. And I thought, this is kind of silly putting all my time and energy into this. Why not do this and make myself successful? So I always kind of wanted to start my own business, but then it's how do I come up with the idea? So I was kind of exploring some ideas at the time. And one of the things I ended up doing is that when you're a nurse and you do certain jobs, you have to have certain American Heart Association certifications to do them. And these certifications are required and have to be renewed every 2 years. And so I went to get mine done. And when I went to get it done, a friend of mine told me that she found somebody that was trying to franchise her business. Well, in actuality, it was illegal for her to franchise her business. But what she did is she basically kind of showed me how she had started her business and told me how to do it. And so I then took that opportunity to actually, take that information and start it and make it even better, actually. It was a great opportunity because I was a single parent at the time. And so it's not like I could just quit my full time job to be able to start another one. But I was able to teach these classes in the evening and on the weekends when I wasn't doing my other job and, slowly build it up to the point that I was able to then transition to doing it full time.
Got it. Now walk me through this because actually met several people over my course of meeting people in companies. It happens quite a bit who had these CPR training companies and really did quite well because they always had a pretty good size amount of students. And at the time, Bethany, I didn't really know a whole lot about what you just said that you have to be trained every so often. Now, the individuals that were doing the company, I don't think they were a nurse. I think they got qualified and then started teaching and then just tapped into some places that had to refer their employees or associates to get the training. Is that kind of the background on this business model? If we could just not outside of your world, look at the business model of offering CPR classes as a business company. Is it easy to get into? Do you have to be registered outside of the CPR? I just know our audience are going to want to know that. So I thought I would ask.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, and the environment for it was very different back in 2005 than it is now. It is reasonably easy to do it as long as you kind of know how. And certainly to just teach CPR, you don't really even need to have a particular medical background. Now, I teach a lot of advanced life support classes as well. And you do need a medical background to do that. And a lot of the people I teach are nurses and physicians. And so the thing is that obviously for any kind of credibility in what you're doing and understanding the material and being able to teach it, you have to also, be licensed as well. But to be perfectly honest, if somebody gets the instructor training through the American Heart Association and they find a training center they can align with and they purchase the mannequins, they can put up a shingle and start teaching classes. It's just that it's much more competitive now than it used to be. When I started my business, there were far fewer companies doing it, and now it seems like they're kind of popping up everywhere. Um, so it's pretty competitive now, but it is a reasonably easy business to start. Also, because people cannot work, at least in the hospital setting, unless they have this certification, which many times they can get through their hospital. So I have hospital contracts where I go and offer the classes at the hospitals. But if it doesn't work for them, they can't work without this certification. So there's high motivation, obviously, to come
Yeah.
and get the class somewhere. And then if they like you, I have people that have been coming and seeing me every 2 years since I started the business, which is wonderful because they become like family, so it's, you kind of have built-in repeat business.
I know, and see, that's what I love about it is I love everything that has an annuity business to it. I call it annuity business, some kind of repeat pattern. My exposure was at taking a backcountry training course, for
Mhm.
because I was doing a lot of I go in the woods one day and I come out the woods many days later. So I wanted to have that understanding. Now, with that, from a competitive standpoint, though, and your certifications, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this I'm making statements on, okay, Bethany? But you went off to get a lot of certifications and that allowed you to have more connections with different organizations and associations. So basically, the difference between your company than somebody who sold the shingle is I know when I looked at your bio, you got a lot of three letters names after you, right? Of what the company's certified in. So talk to us a little bit about then how did you go about the certifications and how did that change the dynamics in propelling your sales growth by having them? Everybody likes to know where people go to get themselves set apart above the competition, how they do it, and the difference that made, if that makes sense as a question.
Okay. So, first of all, I had most of these certifications already because they were a requirement for my job.
Gotcha.
And what I did is this person that was trying to franchise their business, um, basically trained me to be an instructor. Not in a completely legit way, which I found out later, but at the time I didn't know until I started doing the research and making sure it was all good. But in any case, so once she trained me to be an instructor, then I was working with her some at that point and kind of following her examples of what she did for marketing and everything at the time. But these were not, other than just I had the certification. So it was just you have to have the certification to become an instructor, and that's what she trained
Okay.
me to do. So
Gotcha.
the thing is that also, if you think back 20 years ago, it was really before, I mean, the internet and websites and all that were very new at that time. And so a lot of the marketing that we did was when students would come to me, obviously I had connections with people in the hospital setting because I was still working in a hospital setting. So I would give people business cards and flyers and tell them to go hang them at their business. It was old school back then. But I also recognized the power of the internet, and I was one of the first training sites that actually had a really great website. And not only that, but I realized the importance of the internet. And I worked, my husband at the time was working for another company who had some a really amazing web designer and also a really amazing programmer who I worked with to develop an online registration system. And so I paid him to do all of this. And at the time, I'm a nurse by background. Unfortunately, I didn't have an MBA, and the internet was new and all this. And I didn't realize that even though I paid him to create this for me, this online registration, which made it so easy for students to just go online and register. Um, I didn't realize that technically, since he wrote the code, he actually owned the code. And so, ended up, and I had spoken to him before I didn't get anything in writing. I didn't know.
Right.
And I had spoken to him and said, look, this is my competitive advantage. So, I need assurances that, this is for me. I'm paying you. You're not going to go sell it. Well, yeah, that doesn't not how the world works,
No.
which of course I know now. And so it ended up being such a great program that pretty much the majority of training centers in the United States now use this program. But I got nothing out of it except paying him to create it. So that was kind of one of my big mistakes in business, but it was my competitive advantage initially. It's
Yeah.
just that then everybody had it, so it wasn't a competitive advantage anymore.
You know what I find so fascinating every time I hear stories is that the main lessons are timeless. Okay, today we can hear this and go, well, registration online, everybody knows about that. But the concept of this paying for somebody to do something that seems not that important at the time, other than the competitive advantage, not realizing that down the road it could be the greatest things than sliced bread, and then suddenly they're going to sell it to somebody. We could talk about that similar story in many contents. So it comes back to the main lesson is when you hire someone to create something, have documentation showing you own it. And that is a lesson from there. That's a lesson today and a lesson in the future. And when you're a small company, especially, you don't think that way. You're
Mm-mm.
just going and you're piecemealing and you're taking your little toe and you're dipping it here and you're putting it together. You never ever think that way. And that's why I always tell people, I don't care how small you are, think big. Think processes, think documentations. I don't care how good friends you are with somebody, think that you won't be down the road. And I'm not a pessimist or anything. It's just that way of thinking through ahead of time so you're prepared. Fascinating, fascinating on that. So,
Yeah, no, that's totally true, though. As a small business person, you're thinking, okay, this will be a competitive advantage. What can I do to make my life easier? How would this work? And you have all the institutional knowledge that's going to make it successful. The guy that programmed this for me knew nothing. I gave him all of that information to be successful. He since has sold that company, and he's retired in Boca Raton living on his boat. So
oh my God, that's a classic. That's a classic. We're already learning these life lessons. I knew we would. So I really think it's interesting too, because back in that time period, it probably was a learning curve for the visitors to the site because they weren't used to going in and registering as well. So yeah, that's really interesting.
he was such an amazing programmer, though. He made it so seamless. He's brilliant. I'm, not gonna lie. I was very fortunate to find him. And so even though people were new to the online registration process, he was able to make it so intuitive and so seamless, which is why it became so popular. And then once people started using mobile devices, we were able to seamlessly make it so it worked on mobile devices. Because nowadays, most everybody registers on their phone, they don't even go to a computer anymore. So, just being able to have that, flexibility and ability and for it to work so well, it was amazing.
Yeah. So on this same vein of thought, the things we don't think about when we're small and starting out, I want to just talk about a generic word letting you to go anywhere is processes. Because whatever I always see is whatever the processes are internal, it's whether you have to get certificates out or signing people up or making sure everybody knows where to go or making sure the instructors are there when they're supposed to. You've got a lot of things that are connecting. So I would assume there was a lot of processes in place. And I've always said, Bethany, if you start out, even when you're the only person and you create a process for yourself, that is going to be an advantage because when you suddenly need more people involved, you're so busy, you don't have time. The processes, you need to kind of hand them to somebody when they get on board. And so what I always see where I'm going with this is small companies, they start like this, then they take off. And then I see them literally backtrack a bit because they're having to build in the processes, the technology, whatever that they didn't have before and they miss opportunities because they're not really ready. You're shaking. You get you understand. So with that is just kind of a generic, let us learn a little bit from your experiences. I'm sure you had some of those things happen within your company and its duration.
Yeah, and I think what happened is that because very early on in my company, I started working and developing this system, it as I would run into an issue, I would have him program it into this software. So it ended up being very powerful because all of the things that I knew could make my life easier, like for example, assigning instructors. We built that into the program so that instructors could basically bid for classes, is what we said, but they would let us know their availability all done through the program. So we would put in there when our classes were available. They would say when they could teach. We could easily see who was available. We could assign them. We do everything through the program. So it was a great foundation. And when you can kind of anticipate as much as possible what you're going to need as a small business, what really saved us and made it work so well was the fact that we had that great foundation that was flexible so that we could kind of adjust it and build it as we went a little bit. And so as we would come up with a new challenge, we could build that into the system. So it's like so many of our processes basically were centered around that foundation, and that made it very easy for us to be able to accomplish a great deal just with that one sort of centralized program.
That's fascinating and I have to say unexpected and surprising to me. So as I was thinking about your company, I'm thinking CPR and all these instructors, I didn't realize how much it's a technology company in many ways because this technology not only help people sign up, which sounds simple as you were first saying it, but it's on the back end helping you schedule, helping you structure. It really ended up being the foundation of the company. I find that so fascinating, especially when you think about how long ago it was. Now I understand why you told that story. It wasn't just a little online registration that was before its time. This was an entire company management system.
Yeah. And, this is totally jumping ahead, which I shouldn't probably do.
So
We'll
please
get
do.
there eventually. But one of my greatest frustrations with the company that I sold to was that they didn't use the same system. And because this system is a foundation for everything, um, the greatest challenge has been the fact that all of those systems do not work with this new company in the same way they did with ours. So I have unhappy customers now because the other system was so easy to use and it was so seamless and it worked perfectly every time and it automated so many things um, that they, I my students are and clients are not happy with this new system. Like you don't realize how important and how fundamental that the foundation is of the company, because if you have a good foundation, then you can grow and you can build upon it. But if you don't have a good foundation, with this new company, it's like they're constantly trying to fix problems and you can't look forward to the future to making it even better because you're constantly putting out fires. And so, the time and money and energy that it takes to really make a good foundation sets you up for future growth in a way that I can't even emphasize the importance of it because that's what makes all the difference.
Well, see here, this is interesting. And Lauren, capture in the chat. I love what you said, and I won't be able to repeat it. But if you don't have a good foundation, you don't have the platform to grow from. And that was exactly what I was talking about a minute ago, that many companies within themselves do not have the foundation. And they're experiencing it now with the purchasing. They're lacking the foundation that you had in place. And I want to get to the purchasing because that's a fascinating story, but let's fill in a little bit because the part I want to go from is, and we can go there as quickly as you want, but I want to go from Bethany starting the company to the amount of people and clients and customers, et cetera, and instructors you had right up to the point of starting to look for somebody or being contacted by somebody. So people have a feel of, okay, I grew it. How far did it get to in, just capacity and infrastructure and size, so they got a picture of it and then we can jump into then what happened next. So walk us through a little bit of from you to that point.
Okay. So, one of the things that I had as an advantage in growing my company is the fact that I had an intimate knowledge of everything that we did, which any small business owner should have, but I was able to teach all the classes. So not everybody that necessarily starts a company similar to mine is in that situation. So I could always fill in, I could cover, I knew everything. I knew how to train people to teach the classes. I knew how to do all of that. So it's the kind of business that people don't tend to teach full time at. They tend to teach while they're going to school or, you know, in addition to their jobs or, just because it makes a difference in people's lives. It's a really cool business. And so it's kind of a business that you don't necessarily hire people and then they stay with you forever. Um, because a lot of them are in transition. So that is a little bit of a challenge. I I had at the time that I sold the business, I had just two other people in the office coordinating everything. Was like I say, with that foundation, with that enrollware system that we were using, there was a lot of stuff that was automated and pretty easy to do. So then we just needed to have people that were in the office to, provide good customer service. Um, and I did have one instructor that did teach with me pretty much full time for about 15 years, which also helped me a lot to be able to kind of transition as we were doing the other things. But probably at the time that I started getting approached by people interested in buying the business. Probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would start getting people contacting me. And I think a huge part of that also was just social media, or I guess I should say, basically reviews. I can't emphasize enough. I'm sure anybody that has a small business knows that Yelp can make or break you at this point.
Yeah.
And especially in our area, it seems to be more utilized, I think, than in some other areas. But I had like really great Yelp reviews. Customer service has always been my number one thing, and Google reviews, and just the things that we would do to kind of encourage people to, just remind them and talk to them and give them a good experience so that they would feel like they wanted to do something nice, like leave you a good review. So I think that those things, that sort of is what caught the eye of people that were interested in buying the business, is because they could pretty easily see that it was, obviously a well-run business with good customer service, or we wouldn't have those kind of ratings. So I think that that was a big deal. As far as I don't know that it was, I'm sure, you can find anybody's numbers anywhere on the internet. So
Right, right. Yeah,
I'm sure
exactly.
they were doing that. But like if somebody was interested in buying a CPR business, all they would have to do is Yelp or Google and it would
Right.
pull up. I always did a lot of stuff with SEO rankings too, which was
Okay.
helpful. So that's how they would find me. And then when they would find me, then they could, look at reviews and everything. And then they could look at the financials. They could pull that up. And I think that's why I started getting the interest.
You're one of the, I've had several guests, but you're the second one that's really referred specifically to Yelp reviews. And the other guest had a school to teach bartending. and their Yelp reviews were huge and, close to 4, really, if not 4. And that, they said, was the biggest drawer of people to their classes because people would search, they'd see the Yelp. And it's interesting to me, and I'm wondering, and you may know or not know, does Yelp work more for companies that have a location? Because she had an on-site class versus just internet sales or anything like that. Why do you think Yelp versus Google played such a big difference in your world, if you even have an idea, if I can ask that?
I think it's a little bit regional. I mean, you want to have both Google and Yelp. It just seems to be that in the Los Angeles area, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of Yelp reviews. And I think because, like, when I've traveled, other places don't seem to necessarily utilize it as much. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it's regional. But, I mean, it's important to Google and and we would send out, like, just an email thanking people for their classes after, they attended and say, "Hey, if you didn't have a good experience, let us know, but if you did have a good experience, here's our links to Yelp and Google and whatever." And we would periodically change which one we listed first, Yelp or Google, because
Uh-huh.
whichever one you listed first, it would be the time to be the one that they put it on. Um, but I don't know specifically. I think people are more inclined when there's a location to look at Yelp and when there's not a location to look more at Google. But I'm just hypothetically stating that. I mean, restaurants, especially Yelp, are so Yelp sensitive because, it used to be location, location, location. And now, honestly, you can have a very bizarre location. And if you get amazing Yelp reviews, people will come and find you.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah. I think you're on that. And I'm going to ask you to start highlighting on the purchase, but before we go there, and I know this is not your expertise, but I've got to ask this. Okay. So I'm going to put you into a marketing person right now, Bethany. So many times I have people invest in SEO or any kind of marketing. They spend a fortune and it really isn't getting them where they need to go. And here you are just kind of prodding along on your own, and SEO seemed to have worked for you. I'm not asking to get in the specifics, but I'm just curious. Did you have a company that just really did well for you? Did you learn it internally? What was your just approach to that activity that maybe is created such a favorable result where I'm seeing people hire expensive marketing SEO companies and just wasting money? Can I ask that as a side rail for a second? You
Absolutely.
got
No,
wisdom. You got wisdom.
it's
Can you share
it's
that
a
with
great question because I know nothing about SEO and so I try to hire to my weaknesses, somebody. So and early on, realizing the importance of uh placement in search engines. I did hire a company, and I got frustrated with them after a while because, yeah, my rankings were pretty good, but I felt like I was paying them monthly. I don't like the idea of paying monthly because, I think they work for you initially, and then they say they're doing all this stuff, but I don't believe it. So I kind of let that go and went with a different company that was a little bit more, I could pay them for the work that they did, and that I felt was a little bit better, and I did feel like it helped. For a while, I used Google AdWords, especially when they were new, but then that got kind of expensive as everybody
Yeah.
started doing it. Um, and then, as far as Yelp is concerned, Yelp is dicey because it absolutely made a big difference for me. And I did pay them to take off the competitors' ads and, to have some of the additional features. And I felt like it was worth the money. But Yelp is, I'm not super crazy about their business model. But it worked for me because Yelp was really one of the key things where people were finding me. So that's why I paid it. All of my marketing budget pretty much went to either SEO or Yelp or AdWords. Like, it was all online because that's how the majority of people found me.
Yeah, it's like you have to really try something and then stay on top of whether you're getting the results. That's really it. And cut it off. Too many people think,
Yep.
well, just a little more, just a little more, just a little more. And I think that's where they get in trouble. You got to be honest with yourself and saying, it's not working, cut it off. Let me try something else. You know, as humans, we always think the next corner is going to be better. And that's a little bit of a dicey spot where you got to learn to kind of get the behavior so you're not just falling over the edge all the time. But thank you for that. Thank you.
And one other thing, real quick, about the whole SEO thing. The SEO thing is really tricky because anybody that really knows how to work the SEO can manipulate how it's hard to find a good person you can trust, is what I'm going to say, because they know how to manipulate the whole SEO thing. They know how to say what you want them to. I mean, there's no way for you to know
No.
unless you get a referral from somebody else. And so I think that was one of my biggest challenges, is to just, I mean, I always found the SEO companies that I had through a referral from somebody who had used them. But even so, it's kind of like when people refer you to their doctor, they want to believe that their doctor's the best,
Yeah.
and they tell you that, but that doesn't really mean anything. So I will say that finding a good SEO company, super challenging, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, and you know, your once again, your words of wisdom are timeless because what I hear in your conversation is you're doing your research, you're open to a referral, but you're seeing if you get the results, and you know that they're going to spin it a little bit to make it look like you are getting the results. And at the end of the day, you got to look at your bottom line. I hear all these people say, "Well, you got this return on investment." I'm like, "No, it's the net income that really matters. How much did you spend, and how much did you increase your net income?" So, excellent words of wisdom. So then as you're progressing, you're getting people that are kind of saying, "Hey, Bethany, I might want to buy your company." I have, especially since the pandemic after the COVID, I have more and more people that get approached by sometimes, can I call them looky-loos or something? What's that expression? Which they're not really sure if they're serious. They're just trying to see if they can get a fire sale, if you will. Can I say it that way?
Mhm.
So as you started getting the calls and stuff, how did you know when to look, and how did you communicate? Because that's one of the things I get a lot of questions. Well, I don't want to tell them too much and I don't want to tell them, but I want to let them know I'm interesting. And that's kind of a weird little gray area. So talk about just the initial contacts and communications and the difficulties that you had within that.
Okay. Well, first of all, one of the things about owning your business for, 20 years is you make a lot of connections.
Yeah.
So, and, I had some people that I really trusted, and one person in particular who had suggested a previous company and kind of put me in touch with them, but I really didn't like them. And so, interestingly enough, with the company that I decided going with, because I didn't, this business is pretty unique. I mean, a lot of businesses are unique, but this one is such that not anybody can just buy it and then run it,
Right, right.
because it's specialized. And so he had told me about this company, and interestingly enough, I was approached independent of him by a another company who was looking to a financial company who basically was looking for companies to invest in. I had been approached by them independent from him. So I kind of got, channeled to the same company from two different directions, which was kind of cool.
Mm.
And the great thing about it was that what was unique about this company was the fact that it is a training center with a similar history to mine. Um, and so it was nice because I was able to check them out. Plus, through this, friend acquaintance of mine who knew of this company, I was able to check them out a little bit before going forward with it. Plus, having the financial backing that they had, I figured that it would be a safe, reliable place to sell, because you want to make sure that if you're going to sell and have a deal, that you're going to actually get the money that
Right.
you
Yeah,
promised.
exactly. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. Yeah, that's the whole point.
yeah, so that got a little dicey too. And so it was kind of an interesting process too, because I had some, family things going on, with an illness with my mother, and I kept kind of putting them off, and they were actually very patient, kept, kind of saying, hey, no worries, we'll wait, whatever. And then I ended up having several conversations with the owner, who had started that company. And like I say, it's a bigger version of my company, and based out of Seattle, and they've been kind of expanding along the West Coast. So it seemed like a good fit, and I really enjoyed the conversations. It seemed like we had similar goals and focuses for what we wanted our businesses, our companies to be. Um, and it seemed like it would be a good fit. And so, through those conversations, I then proceeded into sort of the financial aspects of it.
Which brings up the financial aspect. And what I always tell Bethany, everybody, is I tell them, you really got to have your financials in order. It's just like selling a house. You got to have the house in order. And that may require, if you're not having the financials in order, doing some work with your accountant or a person who understands financial statements, looking at them, making sure your accounting's correct, because it really does get involved in this process. So to any aspect of just the process and some things you learned, and, knowing how you have to share information and challenges or contracts you sign before showing information, those are the kind of questions that a lot of people ask. They're not sure how that works because they never experienced it. So it's all kind of gray to them. What happens behind the scenes?
Yeah, that was fun, because guess what? I'd never done it either. So that's why I called Lori. Lori, help. So, but yeah, I mean, so one of the first things that we did when I said that we would explore, whether we could come to an agreement, was we did sign an NDA to make sure that, we had, some legal understanding. And then, yeah, it takes time, because, it's all these things that, it's all these numbers. And I mean, fortunately, we used QuickBooks. Fortunately, we did a lot of our own, um, bookkeeping, but we had it set up by a bookkeeper. We had an accountant that had been working with us for many years. But the other thing is that my accountant had some things set up a certain way, and the financial company wanted to see it a different way. So then we had to actually pay the accountant to switch things over so that they would be in a way anyway. So, and then of course, there's always the discussion of how you calculate the value of the company, and,
Right.
just and all of that. So it's definitely a process, and it's a little intimidating because you've never done it before. So you just have to kind of take one day at a time. And, I mean, you have to, first of all, kind of do some research, and hopefully you trust the people that you're working with, but you get to know them more as you're in the process too, because you haven't sold your company until you've signed on the dotted line. So, I always felt like if there were red flags that occurred or whatever, I mean, worst case scenario, they have my financial information, but I'm not going to sign anything if I am concerned about it. And so, yeah, so the process just would continue. And I swear it's just like, anything else. You are sure that you've given them the paperwork, and then they want something again. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. And you're trying to run your business while you're doing all this stuff too. So, but you know what? It's just like starting a business. My saying is, how do you eat an elephant? Not that I want to eat an elephant, but
One bite at
one
a
bite at a time.
I love it. Nobody ever says that anymore. Thank you. I'm glad. You got
I
to be a
love
certain
it.
age to say that. It is so true. And this financial aspect is very daunting. And I always tell people, you have to, like you talk about your account, You have to have good people on your side because you won't understand when they look at the numbers what they're looking for or what they're seeing, because although they're the same numbers you used with the accountant, they're looking and aligning the numbers differently. And they are looking at for a story, and they're wanting to see the story in the numbers. The accounting is looking for the numbers in a form to fill out a tax report. Same numbers, different perspective, and a lot of times you don't know. So you really need a financial person that can help you through that process. So when you finally came to an agreement, did you know, just in general terms, did you have to go back and forth on a price? Was it, can I use the word haggle just to say a word, or was it a little bit of a smoother transaction? The how was the process of getting to a price that everybody would agree with?
Yeah, I feel like they always try to lowball you initially. And you know what? I was at the point where, you know what? I can totally keep running my business. And my one concern was that I didn't want to work harder for less money. And because my goal was I'm not really ready to retire quite yet, but because this opportunity came along and it seemed like a good fit, I figured, well, then I can stay on without all of the headaches and work as long as I want. But, I don't have the ultimate responsibility for running my business. So I get some of that pressure off. And not only that, but I can give, 2 weeks notice, or maybe I'll be nice and give a little longer
Yeah.
than that. But you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
can leave at some point and I can retire, but my clients and everyone will still be okay because it will continue on. I wasn't in a situation where I had to sell it. So I definitely went back and forth with them on
Mhm.
it. Um, I ended up settling, especially with what they're paying me, for a little bit less than I felt like was reasonable. But I made that decision because of the overall, um, you know, how I felt like it would be kind of the best option. And, I'm not required to stay here. In the agreement, there's nothing that says I have to stay for 1 year or 2 years or anything. So I figured that from that standpoint, it would give me the freedom and I would be willing to, fudge on that a little bit. But I did go back and forth with them a few times to get to the point where I was even willing to go through with the deal.
Yeah, and you know what I tell our audience all the time, and I tell all my clients, there's more than just money. It's what lifestyle, what freedom, what choices does it give you? There's a whole lot of things that go into compromising and making the right decision. Well, I've got a couple questions I just want to ask from the audience. I don't think that perhaps this is, something that we can answer on this show, but I at least want to be respectful and ask. And this is Armina, I think if I said the name right. He teaches cooking classes, wants to know if he was try to protect the processes of the teaching, which I think is a very hard to protect processes in teaching. So that's going to be my answer. It's got to be a unique thing, so it's very hard to protect. So there's really a challenge in protecting a process. But when it came to developing the software, if you went back and you did something based on what you know today, would the contract just say that you own it? Would it just say, I own the software and you can't sell it to somebody else? Would that be what hindsight would have caused you to do now?
Yeah, and it was so new what I was doing at the time. I don't know, what processes were in place, but I would definitely, I didn't get a lawyer involved at the time, but I would definitely have legal advice and have it in writing that I owned that product because I was paying for it. And that, if there's a way to even do this, because of course I'm not an attorney, but, I would try to have wording so that the person programming it didn't own it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I don't even know the terminology for that or if that's feasible or not, but that's what would have saved me a lot of headaches. The other thing I was just going to say is that it's difficult to be able to protect the things that you create, like the cooking classes. But if you can copyright your content, trademark it, those things will protect you at least a little bit, so that if somebody starts, trying to take your things, you actually have some recourse. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I would say about that.
Excellent advice. Well, as we come to a close, Bethany, it's always different from an outside perspective, but you know what? I see it as such a beautiful landing. You start this company, you grow it, then you get to a point where somebody approaches you, you sell it, but you have the freedom and ability to still stay with it and do what you love. I mean, I bet you back, like everybody says to me, oh, things turned out. And I go, I wish I knew that when I was 20, 30, and 40, I wouldn't have worried so much. So obviously at this step, you can kind of turn around and go, hey, that turned out pretty cool. But I know during the process, you weren't thinking that. But as I admire everything that happened and I really appreciate your story. And I just want to say, as any other final words or advice you want to tell the audience, please do so.
Um, you know what? The thing that I so appreciated about running my business was the fact that I didn't have to worry about some new boss coming in and messing up something that I was loving. Um,
Yeah.
all the headaches that I created, I had to solve, but that was okay with me because I didn't have to deal with anyone else, and I loved that. Um, so now I've had to transition, which is always a fun transition, into working for someone else. And I can't fix all the problems anymore and I have to let them go. But there's the freedom of that in knowing that if I want to change or I want to do something else or I want to start a new business or I want to leave, I can do that. So I guess that my lesson learned is appreciate the advantages of what you have. If you have your own business, you appreciate the autonomy and what you have there, but you appreciate a different type of freedom when you're, when you sell it and transition and work to work for somebody else.
Very, very wise words. I just always come back to the same thing, personal or in business. Life is just so friggin' fascinating. Isn't it? It's just a fascinating journey. And every single bit of the journey creates a complete new experience and environment and platform to learn from. And that's what I just find interesting. I'm just a very curious observer and fully engaged participant in life. Well, thank you so much for sharing your life with us. Lauren, was that not just another incredible story? Let's see if Lauren's got her voice here. You got a few words for us, Lauren? And by the way, I want to make sure we get that BOI link in again. Maria, you probably already on it. Maria asked if she could have that link, so I want to make sure we got that in again. But Lauren, got a few words to say. I won't take too many of your vocal cords here.
Just a few. Wow, Bethany, that's amazing. I saw that Annie Lori commented that she had taken
I saw
CPR
that too. That was
certification.
awesome.
I
Oh,
had to think back because I was like, I remember this company. I did too. Back
Did
when
you
I was
really?
like a YMCA instructor. It's insane.
oh my God, that is hilarious. Look at
So crazy.
that. I love it.
Full circle moment this morning.
It's awesome.
Who would have ever thought when we were talking before the show that, wait a minute, I was a client. I actually took it. That
It's
is
one of the
great.
most fun things about this has been, it's like, it's a small world,
Oh,
even in LA. I mean, it's ridiculous and
for
it's so
sure.
cool. It's so
For
cool.
sure.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Bethany, for coming on. I'm always out here. If you start another company, the Pasadena SBDC, Annie, myself, we're out there. You just come with your new ideas, and we'll see what we can do to help you with those. And if you're just gonna vacation, enjoy, and be on, some beach doing whatever you love to do, great pleasures to you in that as well. Well
Yeah.
deserved. So everybody, Lauren's going to stay a little bit behind as she always does, and she's going to make sure you get information. You need to get in touch with me. She's going to make sure you have the BOI link. If you got a question on it, email Lauren. I'll email you back. You need an appointment. I'll talk a little bit about it, and I'll keep reminding people because I want to say thank you so much to our frequent flyers that are here, but we also have many new people, and we have new people joining us all the time. So for at least until the the near future, I'm going to make that one of my slides so everybody's aware of it, not delving into it so deep, but at least let you know an awareness. So next week, be sure to join Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Thank you for being there today. Thank you, Bethany. And Lauren, rest your voice so we got a full Lauren back. Bye, everybody.
Bye, ladies. Thank you. All right, everyone, be sure that you take a look at the chat. Oh, Rosalind, that's so sweet to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, Annie. I feel tons better, guys, tons better. Take a look at the chat. You'll see that I have the link to our YouTube as well for past shows, as well as what is that? The Fenson website that's on there. Next week's topic, Armina just asked, is about AI and the best AI tools. So be sure to tune in for that. With that, I will see you guys next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. You're very welcome, Armina. Next week, 10 a.m. for another episode of Small Biz Talk, Solutions for Your Small Business. Take care. Bye. And stay well. Thank you, Kim.